Welcome to another episode of Pure Bliss and Balance, a place to help you and your family have your most resilient and happy life. I'm your host, Jennifer, and today we get to meet another amazing guest speaker. And we're going to speak to the importance of resilience and forgiveness. Our special guest today is the amazing Brenda Edelman. She's not only an amazing actress and producer of her own international show about forgiveness and her personal story, but she is also a resiliency and forgiveness coach, along with many other skills. Having said that, it's now time to introduce you to the incredible Brenda Edelman. Welcome, Brenda. So glad to have you here today. It's just a great honor to have you here to share your story of resilience and of hope and of these great strategies that you're going to share with our community. Feel free to start with how you got to where you are here today.
I have something actually quite concise for you. I grew up in Brooklyn with a Jewish wannabe Italian father who taught me how to drive a Cadillac at 6 and how to shoot a gun at 10. A bohemian artist mom who took me traveling with her all over the world and read Shakespeare to me from the time I was 3 years old as a bedtime story. Big characters, big loves, big laughs. And then in 1995, my father, who I adored, shot and killed my mother, who was my best friend, and quickly thereafter moved in with and then married my aunt, my mother's sister, which, I guess no pun intended, but that one shot really did blow my world apart and had me lose everything, lose my family in that one night, lose the world that I knew it. And yet, once I was able to go deep enough, get the support I needed, and really for me, found a way to forgive my father, which wasn't, I forgive you, I love you, come back into my life and continue to behave the way you have, taking responsibility. But I forgave him, meaning I let go of the burden that I was holding of feeling like I needed to punish him or love. Love him, I hate him, I love him, I hate him. Once I was able to forgive that and tap into the pure love I had for him, so I didn't get rid of that, but and make self-honoring choices, I ended up taking him to court for wrongful death, which actually had him skip town. And my life basically since then has been about sharing how I was able to forgive him and now express myself, share my story to help others.
Wow. A powerful story in a concise way, as you put it. I am taking pause to digest all that. It brings me back to the concept of forgiveness, which is such a powerful tool in our lives. And I mean, that's the epitome of forgiveness. And I'm just imagining how that must have been so challenging for you. And I'm wondering what the first steps were in terms of how you even started that path to forgiveness. Do you mind kind of delving into that a little bit more?
Yeah, I didn't even really, I had heard you're supposed to forgive, you're supposed to forgive. And so I was just really trying to forgive because I was thinking, well, nothing I do is going to bring my mother back. And I love my father. And unfortunately, just telling someone to forgive is what I call kind of spiritual bypass if you don't know what that means, because you can forgive, but then underneath have this seething anger that you either take out on other people in your life or which I more did, like isolating myself. My addictions were overeating and over exercising, kind of beating myself up for eating so much so that I wouldn't have to think about the real issue. And it was first in getting all of that crazy chaos out of my head and putting it into my journals during my sleepless nights, and like getting up the next day, finally falling asleep, getting up the next day and witnessing what I had actually lived through, I started to have massive compassion for myself instead of just going to that bypass. And then I was in an acting class. I got back into acting class, and I started writing my rage out onto the pages of that journal too in poetry. And I turned one of those poems into a scene in a top acting class in LA because I felt so much like I was hiding and that I was like so ashamed. And I just had this inner guidance. I needed to put it on stage. And so I put up like 15 minutes of what is now my critically acclaimed one person show, my Brooklyn Hamlet. And I was terrified. And I was like, I'm going to be so judged. And instead, I got a standing ovation. A director wanted to work with me. People told me how they were healed, even though they didn't have my story. They had a story of betrayal, abandonment, and things like that. And I still didn't really know about forgiveness, but I'd say that part of the process was about honoring myself, seeing myself, witnessing myself, bringing my inner child in, loving myself. And then I was guided in that acting class. There was someone who was getting a master's in spiritual psychology. And I went to that class. I did that 2-year program. And that's where I learned really how to forgive.
I love how you take us through the steps, because that's what it is, isn't it? It's a process. And sometimes we might fall back, and sometimes we get 2 steps forward, and again we fall back, and then we get 3 steps forward, and so on. And it's that forgiveness piece along the way, that compassion that you give yourself. And I love how you bring that, essentially that's mindfulness practice, right? That whole concept of mindfulness and compassion and loving oneself to get you through the pain, the struggles. Can we speak to that a little bit more, since there's a huge part of what you do is that spiritual component, to incorporate the understanding of spirituality and forgiveness as one, as you've already started to mention. I'd like to dig a little deeper into that as well.
Yeah, well, that program really, really is where I realized we're spiritual beings having a human experience. And really, the foundation was that everybody has within themselves access to that part of ourselves that is greater than just us, that knows exactly what to do, can get the support that we need, and also that everybody is okay exactly how they are. There's no need to fix anyone else, change anyone else. Like, how do I know what someone else needs? Now that's different than someone comes to me and they want me to help them. Then of course, then I'm a coach. But what I learned also there was I wasn't like the advanced course is there's nothing to forgive. Everything just is as it is, but there are steps to it. And so the first step is, well, I actually have a 3-step forgiveness process that I developed. And what I realized is, I didn't realize it at the time exactly, but I've been coaching specifically on forgiveness. I started out in 2005. And then I wrote my book in 2009. So I looked at the process and I said, why was I stuck in depression for as long as I was, despite the fact that it was a big thing? Why couldn't I move on? And so I realized that it was because I really did not embrace the anger. I did not embrace the rage. I would touch on it and then I would just squash it, compartmentalize, which is what most people do to survive. But if you do it for too long, it turns in on itself and shows up as, like I said, lashing out, lack of intimacy. We don't want to be seen. We have guilt, we have shame. And so in the first part of my process, it's moving out of denial and into acceptance of what is, based on the fact that, like I said, for myself, I was trying to deny that my father did this, but I actually didn't say that before, but it was that I didn't want to lose my whole family in one night. I was afraid to, I didn't know how to. And so I would justify or try or believe my father's lies. So it's about moving out of denial into acceptance of what is, but in that step is embracing the victim. We always are like, I don't want to be a victim. And then we end up being a victim. So it's embracing the victim and really going into the anger, really going into, I hate him. Why did he do, like moving that energy, but in a healthy, safe way. So that's part one.
That is so fascinating and powerful. When we talk about the psychology of, how we deal with trauma, how we get over trauma, do we get over trauma? All those kinds of questions that come up. And let's delve into a little bit about before this massive trauma happened in your life, you were, if it's my understanding is correct, you were already into an acting career. Is that correct?
Yes, I was in part of a couple of theater and I had studied Shakespeare in London and New York. And I was actually doing quite a bit of comedy. And I had done some small films. And my mother had taken me to Broadway shows at the time I was a little girl. And I had this full circle moment in acting class where I'm like, oh my God, I got into acting so I could tell this story. I learned Shakespeare so that in this moment when everything seems too much and I can't see anybody who I can relate to that lived through what I did because most people are hiding, I can know that Shakespeare's Hamlet went through something like I did. So yes, I was an actress and like that was so that was such a gift because when I started healing and started feeling better, then I took one of those poems and put it on stage. I wrote it out into a scene with 3 people, put it up on stage, put a 15-minute piece on stage, and then started really looking at the characters. And like, if I'm playing my father as a good actor, you can't play yourself as a villain. And so it was another stage of healing and looking at my father not just at this deed that he did, but as someone who had dreams that were thwarted, who had mental illness, I'm sure, who, we were in Brooklyn and guns and mafia and there was all this stuff involved. And, my parents who clashed and not ever condoning, but I had to look at him through a different lens, and that was healing.
Wow. And I'm just imagining like all these skills that you learned as an actress. I mean, there's so many, the communication piece, being able to, the empathy piece. I mean, you were already nurturing this aspect of yourself, being able to empathize with other people, other characters. And you're bringing that, all those skills here in play in terms of how you helped heal yourself. With that in mind, how about we delve into what you're doing in the present moment in terms of all the different skills that you're helping other people establish? Because you've got a lot going on, a lot of wonderful programs. Feel free to share.
I do. Well, there's a couple of great things. Well, first of all, that one woman show that I created so many years ago has really had a life. The gift that keeps on giving because it's based on my life story. It's about the power of forgiveness. I get to express myself. I'm like 12 different characters, and I've done that show in 10 states and 4 countries. And since COVID, I had the opportunity in Los Angeles and here in San Diego. I was invited to do it at a theater, 3-camera shoot virtually. So that was amazing. It was the end of 2014. I put together my first online training about how to create, promote, and profit with a one-person show. Because I met someone who was not living in my same city, and she inspired wanted to do a one-person show, and now she lives here and actually has taken classes with me. But so I started teaching online so I could reach people all over the world. Then I started teaching in San Diego how to tell your story, create a talk for entrepreneurs too, a creative talk, a TED style talk, a one-person show. And then I also started teaching video presentation, and then also incorporated into the storytelling for entrepreneurs how to heal from your story, because I realized people had like a shield. They didn't really know how to tell their vulnerable story without either really feeling shitty afterwards because they exposed themselves too much and they didn't know how to take care of themselves, or they just weren't sharing. And so healing from your story. So now I've been teaching for the last like 2 years a healing through story, tell yours class. So I'm helping people heal from their story, but also present it in public so they can really affect other people. And one other thing
Yeah.
is my Phoenix Rising course. So that is something that was channeled through me. So I'd been coaching on forgiveness since 2005, and then I started focusing on storytelling and healing through story since end of 2014, 2015. And then about 2 years ago, I mean, I could talk about forgiveness day in, day out. Like, I want to share this. And I was like, well, what will come forward besides my book? And I created a 30-day process on forgiving yourself, forgiving your mother, forgiving your father, and forgiving God. That's thorough and based on 20 years of me studying all different things. I also have that.
Powerful stuff. I mean, it all boils down to how we communicate with others, how we communicate with ourselves, and really being connected mindfully with our intuition, our how we are connected with our feelings and how we're able to identify them so that we can take those steps to move forward and live our most resilient and happy life. So I love what you're offering to the world. And having said that, you were discussing how you help heal a lot of entrepreneurs because you were seeing that there was a really interesting phenomenon happening where they would come in and wish to share their message, but they weren't digging deep enough into their authenticity of pain and resilience and getting through their story. So what a powerful tool to help support entrepreneurs out there. But I can also imagine that this would be a great tool for families, mothers, fathers, children who've gone through trauma, stuff that a lot of us might even hold on into adulthood because we don't discuss it with anyone, and we realize, oh my gosh, this has been holding me back. It's created so much chaos in my life, and I want to just heal. Would you agree that this can be a great service to others, not necessarily just an entrepreneur?
Oh my God, yes. So I mean, in my healing through story classes, I have people that are a lot of people that are in like 12-step programs, but I've also done work where I've performed my one woman show and then done workshops on forgiveness for college students, high school students. Like people will bring me in, or in the humanities, in high school, to come in and teach these spiritual psychology principles. And what I'll usually do is, in the setting, is I'll say, you know what, I'm going to do 2 minutes from my show, because I'll go to something real, like wanting to kill myself because things were so bad, because these are the things people don't talk about, but they're prevalent. I've talked to enough kids, I've talked to enough people in all different kinds of circles that I know there are suicides in families, there's still illness, there's violence, there's rape, there's sexual abuse, there's child, like it's like I'm privy to it because I share so openly about my story, and I will be share so openly because I know someone is alone and they need to hear that they're not, and that there is help.
I think that is so key to be able to get to that level of authenticity and to allow others to do the same through giving them that safe space to share their stories. Because the history of humanity is based on the foundation of storytelling. That is what has empowered humanity to survive throughout time. And it's the power of humanity's resilience. And if we don't own our stories, then we don't really know who we are. And we don't know where our story is going if we can't truly own our story and own it in empowerment of getting through in the most powerful, authentic, positive ways, which ties into forgiveness, which ties into taking a mindful approach to our life and making mindful, healthy choices and getting over those obstacles and challenges.